Let's talk NAR settlement. What is it? So I get this question asked quite a bit. What the NAR settlement was it last year? There was somebody who made a claim, ultimately out in Missouri, regarding unfair business practices, price fixing, things like that, because commission and fees were not negotiable. Now that's just a very brief intro to what that is, but it's kind of what it is. So ideally there's been some changes. So effective this year in Washington State, they've made it where you have to sign what they call a buyer's brokerage service agreement, which basically says, hey, you and me are gonna work together when we purchase your house. I guess when you purchase your house, if I represent you as the buyer's agent, you will know how I am paid in terms of what that percentage is or flat rate amount. And also, what does that include? How does that work? And who actually pays it? Is it paid by the buyer? Is it paid by the seller? You hear a lot of noise in the news saying buyers are gonna have to pay for the buyer's agent's commission, which seems to make sense. However, let's talk how agents normally get paid prior to any of these changes. Really, nothing has changed too much, with the exception of we have to have some more paperwork filled out before we can show homes. Me personally, I still get paid by the seller, the listing agent's brokerage firm, which is kind of how it's always been set up here in real estate. So what does that mean? It means is if I'm the listing agent and I meet with my client and we'll just use the round number of 6%. If we set up 6%, at that point, we figure out, well, what do I get for me and my team to cover all the costs included in the transaction, whether that's pictures, marketing, advertising, and anything else that comes into play. And then how much of that percentage do we give to the buyer's agent? So it's not two separate fees. It's one fee that gets paid to the listing agent's firm who holds the contract. And then it's ultimately, it's a shared percentage that's always been disclosed. It's always been negotiable. Typically on the buyer side, when we put a listing up, it can go anywhere from 2 to 3%. If it's a piece of land, it might be more or it might be a flat rate, because ideally, people deserve to be compensated. When you go out and buy your first home, do you want to pay the buyer's agent directly? A lot of times, unfortunately, we understand that money's tight. You gotta buy the house so you can start building that equity. We get it, which is why it's always been paid for by the listing agent. It's not necessarily paid by the seller. It's paid out of the fees that the listing agent receives. So again, what does that mean? Well, it's all predetermined. You're not necessarily paying for that buyer, but you're paying for that compensation for that buyer's agent, just like when you're a buyer. So as a seller, it's kind of, is it now or is it later? So ultimately what we're talking about is it's later, which is why this whole lawsuit came up, because apparently in the Midwest, honestly, I don't know why the lawsuit came up. I know what they talked about. They didn't get my input. I don't like the way the settlement went down, truthfully. I think I can speak for being in the Seattle market where it's really competitive. There's no price fixing, at least with myself and my firm. Everything's really negotiable, and a lot of it's just based off of services rendered. I'm gonna work hard to get you everything you need. I mean, that's my goal. If the house doesn't sell, I don't get paid, whether I'm a listing agent or buyer's agent. There's other ways to doing it. We could ask clients to, just pay us individually, but does that make a lot of sense either? So I don't know. I'm starting to ramble, so I apologize. Just going back into it, the whole settlement. So basically, the changes here in Washington State, where we have to disclose how we're compensated, and we do it through a buyer's brokerage service agreement. If you're not quite ready, we have to also have a touring agreement in place. What a touring agreement does, it allows us to enter the home. So just kind of a couple things to keep in mind, just so we're compliant with Washington State law, being that we are all licensed realtors. Other changes, that's the big one. If you read the articles, the national settlement, they'll say that they don't want commissions for buyers agents advertised any longer. However, I belong to what they call the Northwest MLS, which is the greater Seattle area, which is where I market and post my homes through for my clients. And they're not part of the settlement. So they're still posting commissions. You'll still see it. If you go to your Zillow, Redfin, it probably still says it on their sites. It always has. It's always said what the agents are. It's a very transparent business. If you think it's not that transparent, call me. Let's do a consultation. Let's talk about it. I would love to chit chat. I have this conversation quite a bit. Whether you're ready to purchase a house or not, let's get to know each other. I'm here to help. So sorry for the long-winded answer regarding the NAR settlement. However, if you have questions, ask. Some of the stuff in the news isn't always accurate. Trust me, if you know my dad, he asks the questions all the time, and they change all the time too, based off of what he reads and hears, which is typical for consumers. So I believe communication's most important. So let's chat. So call me. Thank you.